giving you an update on the employee retention tax credit. The big question now is not whether or not you'll get the money. We have lots of clients who have gotten millions of dollars at this point in their refunds. But the question is, can that sustain an audit? So if your employee retention tax credit was not qualified by a professional and you get the refund, if you go under audit, the IRS can get the money back. They can say you owe the money back with penalties, and high penalties, that is. So it's really important who does your work. This is not a do-it-yourself project. I've just added a new state to my repertoire, and that meant going back online and searching for sometimes days, lots of hours, to pull together all of the laws that suspended the business. So if you are qualifying by partial suspension, this requires additional work. It's not just a matter of filing the forms. Because the law is so specific on what wages qualify and what do not, what suspension is and what it's not, you need to have a licensed professional. Even the IRS has warned against going to somebody who's just a business who's cropped up to do the ERC, and they aren't really a professional accounting firm. Maybe they have a cardboard cutout of an enrolled agent or a CPA, but they are not really the ones that are doing the work and overseeing the whole process. So the IRS put out a warning after the AICPA warned repeatedly about anyone about these third parties who are not really professional organizations, who may or may not be there in 3 years or by the time that you get audited in order to support you. So it's important that the work that's done is audit proof and you don't have to give the money back. So let me share with you. Just some articles here on the Internal Revenue Service warning to be wary of third parties who are claiming that you qualify for the employee retention credit, but you may not qualify. So this is coming out. It's important that you go through a strict qualification process. We do an interview, and like I said, we pull out the laws. It cannot be suggestions. The CDC suggests this, suggests that. And how else are you going to get the dates that tell you? Second. How are you going to get the dates that you qualify if it's a partial suspension if you don't have the laws? So let's look back at what the IRS has had to say about what qualifies you. Okay, this is directly off of the IRS website, which is still not updated to this point on the ERC. So who is an eligible employer? You have to be partially suspended operations during any calendar quarter in 2020, and this is also in 2021, due to orders from an appropriate governmental authority limiting commerce, travel, or group meetings for commercial, social, or religious purposes, or you qualify financially, it's one or the other, by partial suspension or a significant decline in gross receipts, which is defined later on in the law. So it's essential that you have these orders. And I'm going to link a video that I did about just what my research process is when I go through partial suspension. I don't just interview the clients and let them tell me, well, we were affected, we had a partial suspension. So I see some of these people online and they're saying, okay, yeah, just tell me if you were partially suspended. How do you know if you were partially suspended by a law unless you research those laws? So it's essential that you have those laws. And like I said, the laws I'm looking at in Michigan now, you can't even find them online anymore. I've saved everything that I get, all of the laws that I have. I've done a lot on California. So in the beginning, there were 2 orders in March. And then in August, they implemented the blueprint for a safer economy. So you have to read through all of those laws and see, do you qualify? And it's just not a do-it-yourself project. So some of the people say, well, My clients couldn't come because they had a stay-at-home order. So let's just see what the IRS has to say about that. So if a governmental order causes the customers of an essential business to stay at home, is the essential business considered to have suspension of operations? No, you're not. So it's very important that you understand each of these laws. In addition to this, you have to know things like if you are using these salaries for the R&D credit, those don't qualify. Did you subtract out the PPP wages? Do you understand the limitation on each employee's PPP wages? You can't just take all of the wages and put them to one employee and say, those are the PPP wages that I used for forgiveness. There are limitations on the amounts that you can put per person. Do you have relatives that are working for you? Is there a majority shareholders, relatives? There are many details. The FFCRA wages don't qualify for the ERC. So it's important that all of this is not only documented, but that we go through a massive spreadsheet and we deduct what is not qualified for ERC wages. Now, the way that employees are defined for the purposes of PPP is different than how they're defined for the purpose of the employee retention tax credit. So it's important to have an understanding, a really basic understanding of PPP, how that forgiveness worked, the employee retention tax credit, all the limitations, all of the laws, and have those laws. Now, state by state, what I'm doing, I'm going by the laws. And again, if you listen to my other video, it goes into detail about what's really in order. It can't be that the CDC suggested that you have 6-foot distancing, because some states suggested it's not enough. A suggestion is not an order. It has to be an order. So it's important that we have all of that documentation, because the IRS doesn't do this. When you come back around and there's an audit, they're going to say, prove to me that you qualify. And by that time, and if you can't get some of the orders now, it's not going to be so easy in another 3 years. So it's important that you look and you find the dates where you were suspended. I don't care if you say nobody came into my business because of COVID, or everybody was afraid so they didn't meet with me, or we couldn't have meetings and we canceled them because of COVID. None of that qualifies. It has to be an order. The state of California reopened June 15th. Orders are gone. So there's no more partial suspension after June 15th in California by the state orders. So there may be other county orders, there may be other things, but it's important that you understand that this has to be in order and that you've documented it. Again, I don't think it's a do-it-yourself project. There's just a massive amount of knowledge that you have to have about PPP and about the limitations of which wages are eligible. Now, we go to get the most wages that we can possibly get for you, but we do it legally. So everything is saved. I have all the documentation. So if an audit comes up, there you have it. But if you go into an audit and you just filled out 941X according to whatever you thought, and you didn't do the whole calculations, it's good luck, because that's not a safe way to go. I'm just telling you, I have people who've gotten like $500,000, $1 million. If that audit comes back around, I don't want to be the person they're mad at, and I'm not going to be disappeared. I'm worried about some of these companies that have cropped up. I've seen the contracts that they've asked their clients to sign saying that they are not responsible if anything happens. Like that. Now it's true that if you sign the 941X, you are ultimately responsible financially. So the IRS will come after you, not after the person who prepared your 941X or prepared your documents for the ERC. They will come after you because you've signed it. So make sure that the person you're engaging with is not necessarily the cheapest person that you can get. I'm not gonna necessarily hire the cheapest electrician to rewire my house, and then when there's a fire in 3 years, I go, oh well, you know, why did that happen? No rats. It was my job to research if they were qualified or not, if they're licensed or not. So it's important, I think, that you have enrolled agents and CPAs working on this. In addition, we have a service where I get a power of attorney if the client would like. I pull transcripts from the IRS. I can usually tell status of things. So you want somebody who's going to hold your hand through the end. They fill out the forms and bye-bye, sayonara, you're on your own. It's like, no, you didn't get it. What's wrong? Let's contact the IRS and follow through with the whole process. So it's not always the cheapest that's the best. It's the person who's the most thorough, because as they say, it's not the money that you necessarily get in your hands. It's the money that you get to keep. So we want to make sure that everyone who gets the employee retention tax credit gets to keep it and doesn't have the IRS coming back around. I plan on being in business in 3 years when audits come around, and I don't want clients mad at me because I did something wrong. So I'm going to make sure it's documented, and so that I can sleep at night that I've done it correctly. I feel responsible. And so make sure whoever it is that does your ERC for you has done the same thing, has documented the laws, has done an interview with you. I mean, I know when I'm doing an interview with people, they'll say, this happened, that happened. My customers couldn't come in because they were shut down. I'm like, that doesn't qualify. Give me this, give me this. And I'll ask them questions until we narrow it down as to how they were suspended. And I write that up and tied it to the law. So you can watch that more thorough video that I did on how I qualify through partial suspension. Most of our clients are qualifying through partial suspension. So it is important that it's very well documented. I would not call it a do-it-yourself project. I would not necessarily go with the cheapest joint around. So thanks for listening. If you have any questions on the employee retention credit, employee retention tax credit, you can email me. Watch any of our videos, ask questions, shoot me an email, and I will try to answer any questions you have on the employee retention tax credit. We still have time to file for this. So let's just do it and get everybody money and get it in a way where it's safe and can sustain an audit. Thank you so much. This is Michelle Koppel.